The night before my son's wedding, I was sitting in the small guest room, polishing my worn black shoes. The same pair I'd worn to every big event in my life. My own wedding, my wife's funeral, and now my son's big day. There was something comforting in the ritual. The quiet rub of the cloth against the leather helped me calm my nerves. Weddings are supposed to bring families together, but lately, I'd started to feel like a guest in my own son's life. From the hallway, I could hear laughter, high-pitched, forced. Her laughter. Madison, my son's fiancée. I always thought she was too polished, too smooth, like someone who practiced emotions in front of a mirror. Tyler adored her, though. He said she made him feel seen. I didn't have the heart to tell him she only looked at people when she needed something. I stood up, adjusting my old gray suit jacket, when suddenly, a sharp cry echoed from downstairs. A woman's cry. Then, my name. Eldon. Madison's voice trembled, just loud enough to carry. He hit me. The next few seconds blurred. I froze mid-step as footsteps pounded the stairs. Tyler appeared, eyes wide, face flushed. Behind him, Madison stood clutching her cheek, fake tears glistening under the warm hallway light. Dad. Tyler hissed, disbelief and fury mixing in his voice. What the hell did you do? I didn't. The words barely left my mouth. My chest tightened. Madison flinched, stepping back like she feared me. He tried to tell me I wasn't good enough, she whispered between sobs. Then he slapped me. It felt like someone had driven a nail straight through my ribs. I looked into her eyes, not a tear out of place. Perfectly measured tremble. I'd seen that kind of performance before. My late wife used to say, the most dangerous lies are the ones told with watery eyes. Dad, you need to leave, Tyler said, jaw clenched. Now. Tyler, I said softly, you know me. You know I would never lay a hand on anyone. But his fiancée buried her face into his chest, sobbing harder, and that was it. I could see the moment his heart closed to me. I walked past them, slow and steady, down the stairs, the sound of my shoes echoing in the silence. Guests peeked from the living room, whispering. Someone muttered. I always knew he was too old-fashioned. The night air outside was heavy. I stood on the porch, the wedding decorations around me. White roses, silk ribbons, lanterns glowing like little stars. It all looked beautiful, but it felt rotten underneath. I could have shouted, begged, tried to prove my innocence. But I didn't. Madison wanted a reaction, a fight. I gave her silence instead. Because silence, when used right, is louder than rage. I spent that night in my truck. The air smelled like rain and regret. My hands shook not from anger, but from disbelief. How quickly love turns into suspicion when lies are whispered in the right tone. As I sat there, watching the dark clouds roll over the horizon, my phone buzzed. A message from Madison. You ruined enough already. Don't show up tomorrow. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I smiled, a sad, quiet smile. Because earlier that evening, before she called for help, I'd seen her in the garden. She wasn't crying then. She was laughing, on the phone, whispering something about insurance papers and changing beneficiaries. I had pretended not to hear, but I'd heard every word. Tomorrow, I would not fight her lie. I would let it breathe, let it grow, because lies rot from the inside out. And when her truth finally surfaced, it wouldn't just ruin the wedding. It would ruin her. That's when I started the engine, letting the soft hum fill the silence. The headlights cut through the darkness like truth through deceit. I didn't know exactly how it would happen yet, but I knew one thing for certain. She forgot that I built this house. Every corner, every hallway, every camera. And tomorrow, when the ceremony began, I'd let her lies play out on a much bigger screen than she ever imagined. Morning came slow and gray. A thin mist rolled over the small New Hampshire town, wrapping the trees like smoke. I hadn't slept much in my truck, just stared at the ceiling, listening to raindrops drum against the windshield. Somewhere out there, my son was waking up, probably checking if I'd caused any more problems. I drove to the diner near the lake, the one where I used to take Tyler for pancakes when he was little. I ordered black coffee and toast, but I couldn't eat. My reflection in the window looked foreign, older, smaller somehow. Not from the years, but from disappointment. That's when my phone buzzed again. A message from my neighbor, Hank, the man who'd been helping with wedding preparations. Eldon, heard what happened. Don't sit quiet, buddy. Something feels off about that girl. I stared at the screen. Hank wasn't one for gossip. If he was suspicious, there was a reason. Outside the diner window, I saw the wedding venue across the lake. The farmhouse I built with my own hands 30 years ago. Back then, it was my dream. Now, it was just a backdrop for my exile. I took a sip of coffee and opened the small folder I'd pulled from my glove compartment, the security footage backup from the house cameras. I had installed them years ago for safety. Madison and Tyler had begged me not to remove them, just in case. Ironically, that just in case was now the only thing keeping me sane. I scrolled through the footage from last night. Madison was outside, pacing the garden, her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice came through faintly but clearly. No, don't worry. Once he's out, it's all smooth sailing. Tyler won't question a thing. A pause, then a soft laugh. Of course I'll sign the papers right after the wedding. He trusts me completely. She turned then, her face lit by the garden lanterns, and smiled. That same cold smile I'd seen when she accused me. I stopped the video there. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from vindication. The world had gone mad, but the truth was still solid, still mine. I didn't know if I wanted revenge. At my age, revenge feels heavy. But justice? Justice is something a man like me can't stop chasing. Around noon, I drove back to the venue. I parked far enough away not to be seen and watched guests arrive. Family, friends, faces painted with polite smiles. Everyone pretending this was the happiest day of their lives. Then I saw Tyler. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept either. He stood by Madison, who wore a pale ivory dress and a grin so sweet it made my stomach turn. When she saw me across the field, her expression changed just slightly, a flicker of panic beneath the charm. I lifted my hand in a small wave, and for a moment, she froze. Then she turned back to the guests, clutching Tyler's arm. As I leaned against my truck, Hank appeared beside me. You planning to sneak in? He whispered. Not yet, I said. Just watching. He looked at me, jaw tight. Words spreading. Eldon. Folks are saying she's been running her mouth. Claims you got angry over money. Money. I repeated. Yeah. Said you demanded payment for helping with the renovations. That you threatened her when she refused. I let out a quiet laugh. Clever. She's rewriting history before it's even finished. Hank frowned. You gonna let her? I looked down at the small flash drive in my pocket. Not for long. The ceremony began shortly after. Guests took their seats under a white canopy as the music played, a violin, soft and trembling like a guilty conscience. I stayed in the distance, behind the barn, where no one could see me. But I could see them, my son standing at the altar, waiting. Madison walked down the aisle like an angel descending. Even I had to admit, she played her part perfectly. Tears shimmered in her eyes, lips trembling as if overwhelmed with emotion. Tyler's face softened, and for a moment, I saw the little boy who used to run to me when he scraped his knee. Then the officiant began to speak. If anyone here has cause why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now. For a brief second, silence hung heavy. My throat tightened. Every eye watched the couple, every eye except mine, focused on the small laptop screen resting in my truck's back seat. The video paused at the perfect moment. Madison's voice, the garden, her confession. Not yet, I thought. Timing is everything. I could have walked in right then, played the recording, and ended the show. But I wanted Tyler to see it, not hear it from me. I wanted him to understand, without doubt, who she really was. As the ceremony ended, people clapped. Madison leaned close to whisper something in Tyler's ear. He smiled faintly, but I saw the tension in his jaw. He wasn't as sure anymore. Good, I thought. Doubt is the seed truth grows from. When the guests moved to the reception hall, I slipped around the back, unnoticed. The band was tuning their instruments. Laughter filled the air, and Madison stood near the microphone, giving last-minute instructions to the event staff. She didn't see me, but I saw her, and I saw the small silver laptop sitting on the table next to her bouquet, the same one she'd used last night for her call. I smiled to myself. She might have lied, but she left her truth right where I needed it. Tomorrow, they'd all know who Eldon really was, and who she really wasn't. I waited until the sun dipped low behind the trees before slipping quietly into the reception hall. The room smelled of fresh flowers, expensive perfume, and champagne, a celebration built on deceit. Laughter filled the air, but none of it reached me. I moved through the back corridor, unnoticed, blending into the noise like a shadow among light. The small silver laptop sat where I'd seen it earlier, beside Madison's bouquet of lilies and roses. She was across the room, smiling for photographs, her hand resting lightly on my son's chest. The photographer called out directions, and for a moment, the whole crowd was focused on the perfect angle, the perfect illusion. That gave me 30 seconds. Maybe less. I slipped the flash drive from my pocket, inserted it into the USB port, and began the transfer. My hands were steady. Years of carpentry had trained them to be. The screen came alive, showing a file directory labeled Pre-Wedding Arrangements. I clicked it open, and there it was. A folder named Plan B, Insurance. Inside, dozens of voice memos and text logs. I pressed play on the most recent one. Madison's voice filled the room through the small laptop speakers, low but unmistakable. He's too proud, too stubborn. But once I get him out, Tyler will sign the documents without thinking. By the time anyone realizes, the money will already be moved. I froze. My pulse slowed, but my mind sharpened like a blade. She wasn't just a liar. She was planning to take everything. Another file, a recorded phone call. A man's voice answered, smooth, confident. So you're sure he'll believe you? Of course, Madison replied. All I had to do was look scared and cry a little. They always believe the young bride over the old man. That was enough. I copied everything to my drive and pulled it out, tucking it deep in my pocket. As I turned to leave, I nearly collided with someone. The wedding planner, a woman in her 50s, holding a tray of champagne flutes. She blinked in surprise, but I smiled politely and nodded. Just looking for the restroom, I said quietly. She smiled back and moved on. My heart pounded as I stepped outside, the cool air washing over me like a confession. I'd done it. I had proof, not just of her lie, but of her entire scheme. From the garden, I could hear the music starting, the couple's first dance. I stood by the window, watching Tyler hold her close, his face soft with affection. He looked so much like his mother in that moment that it hurt to breathe. I remembered the last time I saw my wife smile, years ago, before cancer took her. Promise me, she'd whispered, that you'll always protect Tyler, even if he stops believing in you. I hadn't realized how hard that promise would be to keep. Madison rested her head on Tyler's shoulder, whispering something that made him laugh. Then her eyes drifted toward the window and found mine. For a moment, the music seemed to fade. Her smile faltered. She knew. I didn't move. I just met her gaze with the calmness of a man who no longer had to prove himself. Her lips tightened, her eyes darting to the laptop. Then she excused herself and slipped away from the dance floor. I turned and began walking toward the parking lot. My truck was parked under a tree, engine still warm from earlier. I'd just unlocked the door when I heard footsteps behind me. Dad, Tyler's voice. I turned slowly. He stood there in his tuxedo, breathing heavily. His face was pale, conflicted. Why did you come back? He asked, his tone soft but wary. You know she didn't want you here. I didn't come for her, I said. I came for you. He shook his head, eyes narrowing. You think I'll believe anything you say now? I reached into my pocket, pulling out the flash drive. No, I said, but maybe you'll believe her. He frowned. What are you talking about? Your fiancée recorded her own confession, I said quietly. She planned everything. The lie, the money, all of it. She's not marrying you, Tyler. She's using you. He let out a hollow laugh. You expect me to. Behind him, Madison's voice cut through the air. Tyler, there you are? She came running down the path, her dress glimmering under the fairy lights. What's going on? I was just talking to my father, he said flatly. Madison's eyes flickered to the flash drive in my hand, and I saw it. That flicker of panic she tried to hide behind her sweet tone. Mr. Crane, she said smoothly, why are you here again? I thought we agreed you'd leave us alone. Funny, I said, sliding the drive into my jacket pocket. I don't recall agreeing to anything with a liar. Tyler's head snapped toward me. Enough, Dad. But before he could finish, the laptop screen inside the hall lit up again. Someone must have restarted the slideshow for the guests. Only this time, instead of wedding photos, the projector glitched and opened the wrong folder. A voice came through the speakers, hers. Once he's out, it's all smooth sailing. Tyler won't question a thing. The crowd went silent. Music stopped. Heads turned toward the sound. Madison's face drained of color. Tyler stared at her, eyes wide. What is that? She stumbled backward, words catching in her throat. That's not me. It's fake. But everyone heard it. The entire hall fell into a stunned, whispering hush. I didn't have to say a word. For the first time all night, I felt peace, cold, quiet, complete. The sound of her own voice filled the hall, echoing between the chandeliers and the laughter that had just died. Once he's out, it's all smooth sailing. Tyler won't question a thing. The projector light flickered against the white linen walls, the room frozen mid-celebration. Someone dropped a glass, the sharp crack of it shattering cut through the silence like a verdict. Madison stood in the center, trembling, not from guilt, but from exposure. Her carefully crafted image was crumbling before her eyes. Tyler's face twisted in disbelief. What is that? She shook her head, voice high, desperate. It's fake. She pointed at me, her finger trembling. He did this. He's trying to ruin our wedding. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just stood by the door, the quietest man in the room, watching the truth work faster than any revenge plan could. The wedding planner tried to pause the video, but another file opened automatically, the second recording. Of course I'll sign the papers right after the wedding. He trusts me completely. Gasps rippled through the guests. Her father's jaw dropped. Her mother covered her mouth. A few people exchanged glances, the kind people exchange when they realize the fairy tale isn't real. Madison lunged toward the laptop, but the projector cable caught on her dress. She stumbled forward, tearing the hem as the screen went black. Tyler stepped toward her, eyes burning. What did you do? She tried to grab his hands. Tyler, please. It's taken out of context. I was talking about insurance paperwork. It's not what it sounds like. He pulled away. Insurance paperwork? He let out a bitter laugh. You said, once he's out. You meant my father, didn't you? No. Then who? His voice cracked, raw, furious. Madison opened her mouth, but no words came. For once, she didn't have a script. The guests began to murmur. One of Tyler's groomsmen whispered, "Man, that's cold." Another muttered, "She really played him." I watched my son, the anger draining from his face, replaced by something far heavier, heartbreak. His entire body seemed to fold in on itself, the way a strong beam bends under too much weight. He turned to me then. Our eyes met. For the first time in years, he looked at me not as a burden, not as an embarrassment, but as his father. Dad, his voice broke. I'm sorry. That single word hit harder than any accusation ever could. Before I could respond, Madison let out a sharp scream. You all think you're so perfect, she shouted, spinning toward the guests. You believe some stupid recording? He's old. He's jealous. He couldn't stand that his son was marrying someone better than him. Her voice cracked with hysteria. You think he's some hero? He's nothing. She turned back toward me, eyes blazing with hatred. You ruined everything. I finally spoke, calm, steady, deliberate. No, Madison, you ruined yourself. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the band stopped pretending to tune. Then, somewhere near the back, Hank's voice rose. Guess that's what happens when you try to bury the truth, huh? A few people chuckled, nervous laughter breaking through the tension. Madison's chest heaved. She looked around, realizing no one was on her side anymore. Tyler took a deep breath. I can't do this, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. This wedding, it's over. Madison's eyes widened. You can't. I won't marry you, he interrupted, louder this time. Not after this. And just like that, the ceremony unraveled. Guests began to leave, whispering as they passed. The music never started again. The white roses that had looked so beautiful hours earlier now felt like gravestones marking the death of something sacred. Madison stood alone, trembling in her torn dress, makeup streaked with tears. She looked smaller now, fragile, not from innocence, but from the collapse of her performance. I turned to go, but Tyler caught my arm. Dad, please wait. He looked exhausted, ashamed. I should have believed you. I wanted to think she loved me. I nodded slowly. We all want to believe the lies that feel like love. He dropped his gaze. What happens now? Now, I said quietly. Now you start over, and you remember what trust really costs. He nodded, wiping his eyes, and for a brief moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the boy who once trusted me without question. Madison's father approached me then, face pale. Mr. Crane, I don't know what to say. Say nothing, I replied. Just teach your daughter what honesty looks like. if it's not too late. He looked away, shame written across his face. I stepped outside. The cold night air hit me like forgiveness. The lights of the hall glowed behind me, muffled voices fading into the distance. For the first time in months, I felt light. No shouting, no vengeance, just the quiet justice of truth. As I reached my truck, Tyler followed me out. "You're leaving already?" I nodded. "My part's done." He hesitated, then said softly, "Will you stay for breakfast tomorrow? Just us?" I smiled faintly. "I'd like that." He nodded, tears shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Dad." I put a hand on his shoulder, firm, forgiving. "No, son. Thank you." Then I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and drove off down the long gravel road. The headlights cut through the mist, and the wedding behind me faded like a bad dream. But somewhere deep inside, I knew Madison's story wasn't quite finished. People like her don't give up easily, and I had a feeling she'd try to make me pay for her downfall. The next morning, the world looked calm, deceptively so. The storm had passed, the sky was blue, and the air smelled clean. I sat at the diner again, the same corner booth where I'd nursed my coffee the day before. Only now, people greeted me differently. The waitress smiled softly and said, "Heard what happened yesterday, Mr. Crane. Guess truth wins in the end, huh?" I nodded, though I knew better. Truth doesn't always win. Sometimes it just survives long enough to matter. My phone buzzed. "Tyler, Dad, can we meet at the house later? I want to talk." I texted back, "Of course." For the first time in months, I felt the weight on my chest ease. Maybe we could rebuild what had been broken. Maybe the damage wasn't permanent. But peace never lasts long when someone like Madison is involved. Around noon, a dark SUV pulled into the diner parking lot. Out stepped a man in a gray suit with a clipboard. He walked straight to my table. "Mr. Eldon Crane?" "Yes. I'm Detective Wilmer. We received a report this morning. A woman named Madison Rhodes filed an assault claim against you. Says you hit her 2 nights ago." My stomach turned. "You're kidding." He shook his head. "She has bruises, photographs, and 2 witnesses, her bridesmaids." I exhaled slowly, holding his gaze. "Detective, I didn't touch that woman. Not once." He studied me carefully. "I'm not saying you did, but we'll need your statement." He slid a card across the table. "Come by the station this afternoon. Let's clear this up before it gets messy." As he left, I sat back, the bitterness rising again. Madison was playing her final hand, a desperate, cruel move meant to drag me down with her. Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of church bells. Sunday morning peace for everyone else, but not for me. I drove home to my small workshop, the one place that still smelled like sawdust and oil, the scent of simpler times. I sat at my desk, staring at the flash drive lying next to a stack of old family photos. I could have destroyed her with what was on it. But I hadn't, not fully. Only a few recordings had played at the wedding. The rest remained unseen, untouched, including the one she didn't know existed. When she'd made her insurance call that night, she used speakerphone, and one of the outdoor cameras had caught the entire thing, audio and all, including the part where she said, "If this goes south, I'll just say he hit me. Old men always look guilty." That recording was still safely stored. I loaded the file on my laptop, watched her smirking face under the garden lights. My hands clenched, not from anger, from disbelief that anyone could plan cruelty this cleanly. A knock on the door pulled me out of my thoughts. Tyler stood there, shoulders slumped, eyes red. "Dad, she's not done," he said quietly. "She's been calling everyone, my friends, her family, even posting online. She's telling people you attacked her and then faked the recordings to ruin her reputation." "Let her talk," I said softly. He looked pained. "She's trying to press charges. I saw her talking to a lawyer this morning." "I know," I replied. Detective Wilmer stopped by. Tyler ran a hand through his hair. "God, Dad, I'm sorry. I should have." "Stop," I said gently. "This isn't on you." He stared at the floor, shame heavy in his eyes. "I don't know what to do." I turned the laptop toward him and pressed play. Madison's voice filled the room once more. "If this goes south, I'll just say he hit me. Old men always look guilty." Tyler froze. "She actually said that?" "She did." He covered his mouth with his hand. She's evil." "No," I said quietly. "She's afraid. Fear makes people do stupid things. But she picked the wrong man to frame." I handed him a small envelope. "Take this to Detective Wilmer. Tell him it's the rest of the evidence." Tyler took it carefully, eyes glistening. You're not coming with me? I smiled faintly. No. This time, you'll be the one standing up for me. You need to. He nodded slowly, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. As he left, I looked around my workshop, the old wooden walls, the tools arranged in careful rows, the half-finished table on the bench. Every mark, every nail was a story of something built to last. Madison had spent months trying to destroy me with lies. But lies rot fast. Truth endures like wood seasoned by time. That evening, I got a call from Detective Wilmer. Mr. Crane, I've reviewed the new file your son brought in. That's damning evidence. The case is closing in your favor. And Madison? I asked. She'll be facing charges for perjury and attempted fraud. Her father's already cooperating. For a moment, I said nothing. The silence felt sacred. Thank you, Detective, I finally said, for listening. When I hung up, I sat back and looked out the window. The sky had turned gold with sunset, the world finally quiet again. I didn't feel triumphant, just still. Because revenge, real revenge, isn't loud. It doesn't shout or burn. It simply waits until truth does what it always does. Come home. The following week passed like the slow fade of a bad dream. The town moved on, but whispers lingered like dust after demolition. Everyone had heard by now, the fake accusations, the recordings, the investigation. People stopped saying, poor Madison, and started saying, poor Tyler's dad. I didn't want pity. I just wanted peace. Each morning, I woke before sunrise and went out to my workshop. I didn't build for clients anymore. I built for silence. A table here, a birdhouse there. Would never lie to me. You measure it, cut it, and what you see is what you get. I like that kind of honesty. One morning, while sanding an oak tabletop, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Tyler's car pulled up, and he stepped out holding a box. He looked healthier, tired, but lighter somehow. Morning, Dad, he said, setting the box on my bench. What's this? He smiled faintly. Mom's things. From the attic. I thought maybe you'd want to go through them together. For a second, I couldn't speak. The box was small, but heavy with memories. Her favorite mug, a scarf she knitted, old Polaroids from road trips. Things I hadn't seen since before the sickness. We spent hours sorting through them. Tyler laughed quietly at some of the pictures. God, you two were really something back then. We were, I said softly. She could talk me into anything, even dancing. He grinned. I can't picture that. Good, I chuckled. No one should. As the light shifted through the windows, I saw something in my son I hadn't seen in years. Calm. The kind that comes after surviving a storm. He looked older, more grounded. Maybe Madison's betrayal had broken something, but maybe it also built something new, a stronger spine, a clearer sense of what matters. He picked up one of Mom's letters, unfolded it gently. She wrote this after you built the house, didn't she? I nodded. She said it felt like love had a roof. Tyler smiled faintly, but his eyes grew wet. She'd be proud of you, you know, for how you handled everything. I'm not sure about proud, I said, but I hope she'd understand why I didn't fight back right away. Sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's faith that truth will outlast noise. He nodded, then sighed. You know, Madison tried to reach me again. I stopped sanding. What for? She sent an apology, or at least something that looked like one. Said she was sorry for the pain she caused, but also that she did what she had to. I set the sandpaper down. People who destroy others always think they had to. Yeah, he muttered. She's leaving town. Her dad's paying her debts to avoid the trial going public. I guess she's gone for good. Good, I said quietly. But don't hate her forever. Hate is heavy, heavier than truth. He looked at me, puzzled. You can forgive her after all that. I shrugged. Forgiving isn't the same as forgetting. I'll remember what she did, but I won't let it keep me bitter. Your mother once said bitterness is just loyalty to pain. He smiled sadly. She was right. The sun dipped lower, painting the room in amber light. Tyler stood up, brushed sawdust off his hands, and looked around the workshop. You ever think about fixing up the farmhouse again? It's just sitting there. I raised an eyebrow. You sure you can handle all those memories? Maybe we both need them, he said. Start something new together. You build, I'll paint. I laughed softly. You never were much of a painter. He grinned. Then it'll be even more special. For a long while, we worked in quiet harmony, father and son, sanding wood, sorting tools, breathing the same rhythm. It was simple, real, the kind of peace no lie could touch. That night, after he left, I sat alone by the open window, listening to the wind move through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the faint creak of the old farmhouse door. It used to sound lonely. Now, it sounded like home waiting to be lived in again. On the table beside me lay a small photograph from the box, my wife, standing beside a much younger version of me, both of us laughing in front of that same house. Her handwriting on the back said, "Truth is slow, but it always arrives." I smiled. She was right, as always. I picked up the frame and set it beside the lamp. "You were right, darling," I whispered. It arrived. Then I turned off the light, and for the first time in years, I slept without the weight of unfinished stories. 2 weeks later, Tyler and I drove out to the old farmhouse, the same one where everything had fallen apart, and where, strangely, everything had begun to heal. The gravel crunched beneath the truck tires as we pulled up. The white paint had peeled off in places, ivy crawled up the sidewalls, and the porch creaked like an old man clearing his throat. But the bones of the place were strong. I built them myself. Tyler stepped out, stretching his arms. "Smells like dust and ghosts," he said with a grin. "Then we'd better get them used to company again," I replied. We spent the morning clearing out broken furniture and boxes left behind from the wedding. I found the bouquet she'd dropped that night, wilted, brown, lifeless. I tossed it into the fire pit without a second thought. By noon, the air smelled like sawdust and fresh paint. The house was starting to feel like ours again. While Tyler worked on the front steps, I wandered into the old living room. The sunlight poured through the cracked window panes, hitting the floorboards like liquid gold. It was quiet, until I heard the faint sound of tires approaching. A small blue sedan pulled up. A woman stepped out, dressed plainly, maybe in her 30s. She looked nervous, clutching a leather purse to her chest. Tyler wiped his hands and looked at me. "You expecting anyone?" I shook my head. "No." The woman hesitated at the gate, then slowly walked toward us. "Are you Mr. Eldon Crane?" "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Can I help you?" She took a deep breath. "My name's Laura. I'm Madison's sister." The air changed. Tyler froze, paintbrush still in hand. She hurried to add, "Please, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to talk." I nodded warily. "All right, go ahead." Laura's hands trembled slightly as she spoke. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. For what my sister did. For everything." Her voice cracked, and I saw genuine shame in her eyes. "You didn't deserve that. Neither of you did." I studied her face, softer than Madison's, but there was a resemblance. The same sharp cheekbones, the same careful way of choosing words. Only this time, the truth didn't sound rehearsed. "I appreciate that," I said quietly. "But what made you come all this way?" Laura hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a small, crumpled envelope. "Because Madison won't. She left town last week, went to Arizona to stay with an aunt. But before she left, she sent this to me." She handed me the envelope. "She said to give it to you if I ever found the courage to." I glanced at Tyler. He gave a small nod. I opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter, shaky penmanship, tear stains smudging the ink. "Eldon, I know you'll never forgive me, and you shouldn't. What I did was cruel. I told myself it was survival, but it was selfishness. I panicked when the wedding money fell through and thought I could fix it by blaming you. You didn't deserve any of it. Tyler didn't either. I've lost everything now, my job, my family's respect, my name. But maybe that's the price I needed to pay to see what I'd become. You said once that silence is louder than rage. I finally understand what you meant. The silence you left me with, it's unbearable." Madison. Asterisk. When I finished reading, I didn't say anything for a while. The wind moved gently through the trees, rattling the old shutters. Tyler exhaled slowly. "She wrote that." Laura nodded. "She's not the same person anymore. Broken, maybe. But maybe broken is what she needed to be." I folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope. "Thank you for bringing this." Laura smiled faintly. "I thought you should know she regrets it." "Truly." "I believe you," I said. And I did. Because regret, unlike apology, can't be faked. She nodded once more, then turned to leave. Before she got in her car, she looked back at us. "You raised a good son, Mr. Crane. Don't let what she did make you forget that." When she drove away, Tyler leaned against the porch railing, rubbing the back of his neck. I don't know if I can ever forgive her, but maybe it's good to know she's not proud of what she did. Regret's a start, I said. It's not redemption, but it's the road to it. He looked at me, curious. Do you forgive her? I thought for a moment. I don't know, I admitted. But I'm done hating her. I think that's enough for now. We went back to work, quietly at first, then talking again, about old times, about Mom, about the future. The farmhouse started to feel warm again, filled with laughter instead of lies. That evening, when the sun set and the golden light poured through the windows, I stood by the doorway and looked out across the yard. Madison's letter lay on the windowsill, the ink glinting faintly in the fading light. I didn't plan to keep it forever, but for now, it would stay, a reminder that even from the worst lies, truth still finds a way to speak. I turned to Tyler. You know, I said, maybe we should invite people over once it's done. A proper family dinner. No tuxedos, no speeches, just food and quiet. He smiled. Yeah, real family this time. We both laughed softly, and for the first time since the wedding, the sound didn't echo like grief. It sounded like home. By early spring, the farmhouse was almost finished. Fresh white paint covered the once cracked walls. The porch stood sturdy again, and the smell of pine and varnish filled the air. Every nail, every brushstroke felt like a small victory, not just over time, but over everything that had tried to break us. Tyler and I worked side by side for weeks. The rhythm was steady, familiar, the soft thud of the hammer, the scrape of sandpaper, the creak of floorboards settling back into place. I hadn't realized how much I missed this. Not just the work, but the company. Some evenings, when the light began to fade, we'd sit on the steps with mugs of coffee and talk. About Mom. About what he'd do next. About what I'd do when the house was done. I think she'd like what we're doing, Tyler said one night, watching the last streaks of sunset melt into the trees. She'd love it, I replied. She always said the house was more than wood and nails. It was the people inside it. He smiled. Then maybe it's time to fill it again. That thought stayed with me. The idea of filling the house again, not with furniture or photos, but with life. The next morning, I took a slow walk through the empty rooms. The air was warm, and light spilled through the new curtains. The dining table we'd built stood in the center of the kitchen, smooth, solid oak. My hand traced its surface. I could almost hear laughter again, the echoes of Sunday breakfasts, the sound of my wife's humming while she cooked. I didn't expect anyone that day, so when I heard footsteps on the porch, I assumed it was Tyler. But when I opened the door, a surprise stopped me cold. It was Madison. She looked nothing like the woman from the wedding. Her hair was shorter, her makeup gone, her clothes simple and worn. The confident smile, the one that used to hide all her intentions, had vanished. Eldon, she said softly, can I come in? For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I stepped aside. You already know the way. She walked in slowly, her eyes scanning the room. It's beautiful, she murmured. You fixed everything. Not everything, I said quietly. She nodded, looking down. You're right. There was silence, heavy, but not hostile. Just the kind that comes when two people finally run out of lies. I heard you got my letter, she said. I did. Then you know I'm sorry. I do. She hesitated. But you don't forgive me. I took a deep breath. Forgiveness isn't something you ask for, Madison. It's something you earn by changing what you do next. Her eyes glistened. I've been trying. I've been working at a shelter in Arizona. Helping women who've been through real abuse. I thought maybe if I could give something back, it might mean something. For the first time, I saw no performance in her. Just tired honesty. That's good, I said simply. But don't do it to erase guilt. Do it because it's right. She nodded slowly. I know. I just wanted to tell you in person. And to say thank you. For what? For not destroying me completely. You could have, with everything you had. But you didn't. You let the truth do the work. I looked at her, really looked. The truth doesn't need help. It just needs time. Madison smiled faintly, then wiped her eyes. You were right about silence, too. It's louder than anything. It followed me every day until I couldn't stand it anymore. That's how conscience sounds, I said. She nodded, then turned toward the door. I won't take any more of your time. I just wanted to face you once, without lies between us. As she reached for the handle, I spoke quietly. Madison. She turned back, her eyes uncertain. I forgive you, I said. Not because you deserve it, but because I do. Carrying hate is heavier than carrying loss. Her lips parted slightly. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something, but all that came out was a whisper. Thank you. She left without another word. The door closed softly behind her. I stood there for a long time, listening to the quiet. Outside, birds sang somewhere in the distance. The farmhouse felt lighter, as if the walls themselves had exhaled. When Tyler came by later, I told him what happened. He didn't speak at first, just stared at the sunset glowing through the windows. Do you really forgive her? He asked finally. I do, I said. Because if I don't, I'll never move on. And I think your mother would have wanted me to. He nodded slowly. Then maybe I'll try to. Someday. That's enough for now, I said. That evening, we sat on the porch again. The house behind us glowed warm and alive. I looked out at the fields, the same land where I once stood alone in shame, and now, finally, stood free. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It just changes what comes next. The past will always echo, but now, it echoes softly, like the hum of life beginning again. And for the first time in a long, long while, I wasn't haunted by what was gone. I was grateful for what remained. By midsummer, the farmhouse looked nothing like the place where betrayal had unfolded. It smelled of fresh bread, pine resin, and hope. Tyler and I had decided to open it up. Not for sale, not for show, but for something simpler. A community dinner. The idea had been his. Let's invite everyone, he'd said. Family, neighbors, even folks who just passed by. This house shouldn't hold bad memories anymore. And he was right. The house deserved laughter again. So did we. That evening, as the sun began to sink behind the trees, cars pulled into the long gravel driveway one after another. People brought casseroles, pies, jars of homemade jam. Someone even set up fairy lights along the porch railing. By 7 o'clock, the old farmhouse glowed like a lantern in the dusk. I stood at the doorway, wearing my best plaid shirt and an old leather watch my wife had given me on our 10th anniversary. The place buzzed with life, kids chasing each other in the yard, neighbors catching up over lemonade, the smell of roasted chicken and apple pie drifting through the air. Hank, my old friend, slapped me on the shoulder. Well, Eldon, he said with a grin, you've outdone yourself. Never thought I'd see this place alive again. Neither did I said, smiling. Tyler was in the kitchen, laughing with a group of guests. Seeing him like that, relaxed, smiling, made every hard day worth it. As the evening settled, someone clinked a glass. Speech. We need a speech. I tried to wave them off, but they insisted. So I walked up to the porch steps, holding my glass of cider, and looked out at the small crowd. People I'd known all my life. People who had once whispered about me, now smiling and waiting. Evening, everyone, I began. My voice carried easily in the warm air. I don't usually give speeches. The truth is, I've spent most of my life building things with my hands, not with words. But I suppose both can fall apart if you're not careful. A soft ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. I looked around at the faces, familiar, kind, some still cautious. A while back, this house saw something ugly. Lies. Hurt. The kind of things that make you question what's worth saving. But over time, I realized something important. A lie can destroy a day, a month, maybe a year. But truth builds forever. I paused, feeling the breeze stir. I thought revenge would make me feel better. That proving someone wrong would somehow fix what they broke. But the real peace came from something quieter. It came the moment I decided to let go. Tyler stood near the porch rail, listening closely. I caught his eye and smiled. Forgiveness, I continued, isn't about saying what happened was fine. It's about saying it won't own you anymore. I used to think silence was my weapon. Now I think it's just where peace starts. For a while, no one said a word. The cicadas hummed softly in the trees. Then someone started clapping, and soon the whole crowd joined in. Tyler stepped forward, smiling proudly. That's my dad, he said, and something in me tightened, not with pain this time, but with pride. After the applause faded, music started up again. Fiddles, laughter, the rhythm of life returning. I stood on the porch, watching the glow from inside. Children running through the rooms, couples dancing in the grass. At one point, a young woman approached me. Maybe in her 20s, a teacher from the town's small school. Mr. Crane, she said, my parents told me about what happened here. It takes strength to forgive like that. I smiled faintly. Took me a lifetime to learn that strength isn't how hard you hit. It's how soft you hold on. She nodded thoughtfully. That's beautiful. Not beautiful, I said. Just true. Later that night, as the last guest drifted home, Tyler and I sat by the fire pit. The stars were out, bright and quiet. He poked at the embers with a stick. You know, I used to think you were too stubborn, Dad. But I get it now. You weren't stubborn. You were steady. Steady, I repeated with a chuckle. I'll take that. He looked into the flames. I don't think I ever said this properly before, but I'm proud of you. For how you handled it. For who you are. The words hit deeper than he probably knew. I swallowed hard. Thanks, son. That means more than you think. He nodded. You taught me something. That revenge might make people cheer, but forgiveness makes them remember. We sat in silence for a while, watching the fire die down. Then Tyler asked quietly, Do you think Mom would be happy right now? I looked up at the stars. She's probably laughing at how long it took us to get here. He smiled. Yeah, probably. When the fire finally went out, we stood and looked at the farmhouse one last time before heading in. The windows glowed softly from the candles we'd left burning. It didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt alive. That's when I realized the revenge I thought I wanted had never been about humiliation or justice. It had been about rebuilding what was lost, one honest nail at a time. Not vengeance. Redemption. And in that quiet summer night, with my son beside me and peace finally inside me, I knew I had found both. Morning sunlight spilled through the windows, painting golden stripes across the kitchen floor. The house was still, except for the faint ticking of the old wall clock, the same one my wife bought at a flea market 35 years ago. I never fixed its crack on the glass. She used to say imperfections make things real. I sat at the table, nursing my coffee, listening to the world wake up outside. The hum of bees, the crunch of gravel as Tyler's truck pulled into the drive. He stepped inside, carrying 2 paper bags. Breakfast, he said, grinning. From the diner. The waitress insisted I tell you she still talks about your speech. I laughed softly. That speech was mostly rambling. Maybe, he said, setting down the food. But people needed to hear it. We ate quietly, scrambled eggs, toast, the kind of simple meal that somehow tastes better when shared. I watched my son, and for the first time in years, I saw no distance between us. The wall that had stood since my wife's death, built from pride, grief, and misunderstanding, was finally gone. After breakfast, we stepped out to the porch. The morning air was cool, the grass wet with dew. Across the yard, the old oak tree swayed gently. I remembered planting it the week Tyler was born. Back then, it was just a sapling, fragile, uncertain, but determined to reach the sky. It had taken root. So had we. You ever think about selling this place? Tyler asked after a while. I smiled. Used to. Not anymore. I think it's where I'm supposed to finish my story. He nodded slowly. I get that. He sat beside me, watching the horizon. You know, I've been thinking about what you said, about forgiveness being freedom. I used to think forgiving someone meant letting them win. It doesn't, I said. It just means they don't get to live rent-free in your head anymore. He chuckled. Then I guess I'm finally moving out of my own prison. I glanced at him. How are you holding up? After everything? Better, he said. Still hurts when I think about her, but not the same way. It's like a scar. It aches when it rains, but it's part of me now. That's how healing works, I said. Slow, honest, sometimes quiet. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of lilacs from the garden. My wife's flowers, somehow still blooming after all these years. Tyler turned to me. Do you ever miss her? Every day, I admitted. But missing someone isn't pain anymore. It's proof they mattered. He nodded thoughtfully, then smiled. You should write that down. I chuckled. Maybe I just did. We sat there until the sun climbed higher, the light warming our faces. It struck me then how much life could change, how people could hurt, heal, and still find their way back to something that feels like peace. Later that afternoon, I went out back to the workshop. The smell of sawdust and oil greeted me like an old friend. On the bench lay my last project, a wooden box, simple but sturdy, made from leftover oak from the table Tyler and I built. I ran my hand along the smooth surface, then opened it. Inside was Madison's letter, folded neatly beside my wife's photograph. 2 pieces of my past, one filled with love, the other with regret. Both parts of my story. I placed them together and closed the lid gently. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, whispering in that language only the old and the patient understand. I carried the box to the living room and set it on the mantel, not as a trophy, not as a reminder, but as a quiet truth. That we survive not because we win, but because we learn. That evening, Tyler came back with groceries and 2 beers. We sat on the porch again, watching fireflies blink across the fields. The sky turned from pink to violet, then to deep indigo. "Dad," he said quietly, "you think we ever really get over what people do to us?" I thought for a moment. "No," I said finally. "We don't get over it. We grow around it, like trees around a scar." He nodded. "Guess that's enough." "It is," I said. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful. The kind of silence you earn after years of noise. When Tyler left that night, I stayed outside a little longer, watching the stars. Somewhere far away, Madison was starting her own kind of life. Maybe she'd keep her promise to change. Maybe not. But that was her story now, not mine. Mine had come full circle, from betrayal to forgiveness, from noise to calm. I closed my eyes and thought of my wife's handwriting on the back of that photo. Truth is slow, but it always arrives. She'd been right all along. Truth had arrived, not with fireworks or revenge, but with silence, patience, and time. And as the crickets sang and the house stood strong behind me, I smiled to myself. Because sometimes, the quietest ending is the loudest victory of all.